All right, we are live. We're live again. And on this live, we're going to talk about how do you find a high paying welding job? Right? There's a lot of little answers to that, but we're going to talk about most of them. So let's get right into it. All right. Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you at. I am Industrial Dave, and we are talking about where can you find a high paying welding job. Most of your high paying welding jobs are going to be in either your oil and gas industries, your fossil fuels, and your nuclear power. Okay. So those three industries are typically working a lot of hours. Most of them have union contracts, as we've talked about that in previous lives. So, to get there, first, you got to do the stepping stone. So, if you aren't in a union or you aren't in anything, the best chance that you have to get at this opportunity is to try and get into a union hall. Okay. Most of your union halls are going to have the contracts that work in these plants and refineries and stuff, and you can get your foot in the door. Now, for your skills, if you are a beginner welder and maybe you're not in this type of field, or maybe you're in trade school. So the type of welding that you really need to hit hard and practice on is going to be your stick welding and TIG, okay? Both of those processes go hand in hand, particularly in pipe, okay? You you can do structural welding in those fields as well, but if you want your higher end paying jobs, which are going to be typically in your mid 40s and up range, with the per diem and mileage and stuff like that, they are typically going to ask you, do you know how to weld 6G? Okay. So for your stick welding, you're going to have to use what's called a 6010 rod. Okay. Now, I won't go too in depth with that just because I'm trying to kind of answer a broad amount of questions. Okay. So this welding thing is pretty deep, but I want to get to the glue of it all. Okay. So with your 6010 rod, if you're gonna have to learn how to route your pipe with 6010, and then you're gonna learn 7018. Okay. You want to write these down or just kind of listen to what I'm saying. Okay. So practice on your 6010 roots and your 7018 cap. Okay. Some people call it high low rod as well. Now, with your pipe or whatever, you can also run your root pass with a TIG bead. Okay. So you're going to root with TIG and then cap with 7018 as well. Now, this is sort of it's not really elementary, but typically to get in these oil and gas and nuclear jobs and stuff like that, most of the union halls are going to require this test. Okay. It could be some of your larger, 2-inch diameter pipe, or it could be, your schedule 40 and so forth. So that is going to be the basis of the type of welding test that you're going to need. Okay. Now, the more you get good at this, you're going to learn about your x-ray welding, the same type of test, but they're held to a higher standard as far as just a visual inspection and a bend test. Okay. Like I said, that's a little deep if you don't know what's going on, right? I'm just kind of giving you something broad. All right. What you want to remember is your x-ray welding. You want to get good at keeping your welds clean, hot, and tight. Okay. So get your mind out the gutter, all right? That's not what I'm talking about. All right, we're talking about welding, okay? So if you can do these things, practice them, keep your hood down. That is really important as well to get that stepping stone to get these high paying jobs, all right? Now, another one that might seem a little simple, maybe not so simple to people, you're going to have to make friends and talk to people. Even if you're not that type of person, as you start to get out there and get in the field, you're going to have to learn. If you're not that type of guy or gal, you're going to have to open up, right? You never know the people that you're working next to, or that might be around on a job site, and particularly in this industry, is very, very different. It's not like anything else, which also brings me to another point of you have to be careful who you're being mean to. And I'll explain that and the point before, they go hand in hand. Okay. So on one job, you could be, let's say, you could be in Kansas working, right? And let's say Kansas is your backyard. It's inside of your backyard. So you might be on this particular site and you've got a guy that you're working next to, okay? Let's say you're not nice to him, or you're just kind of like a just just a jerk, okay? You're just a jerk to the guy, and he's out of town or whatever, and you're just telling him to do this and do that, and you're just being mean, right? So the job's over. Now the next job might be in Pennsylvania somewhere. Okay. So now you got to go to Pennsylvania. Guess who's in charge of the job? You know, the guy you're being a jerk to. Okay. So it really does work like that, and it can go back and forth, and that can be pretty messy. Okay. So you absolutely have to be careful about who you're working around, who you're being mean to. You don't necessarily want to all the time. And I'm not saying you have to do that, right? But I'm just saying just be mindful of the way that you're treating people. My next point is building relationships. Okay, you just you have to do that. Even just life in general, life is about relationships. Okay, who you hang with, who you decide to make friends with. You don't have to be buddy buddy with everybody, but it is also important to note that, hey, if you know that this guy is always the foreman on that big money job that you've always heard about, why not? Right? It's all about the money. I'm not saying you have to use this person in any type of way, but put a bug in their ear and let them know that you might be interested, or just a little small talk here and there, right? But relationships are really important and are really key. Now, another thing is getting phone calls, okay? If you are a good welder, your phone will never stop ringing. You will always have somewhere to go. I'm telling you, it never fails, okay? If you can pass X-ray and you've been on all the big money jobs, word gets around extremely fast. Really fast, okay? And if you're a screw up, it gets around even faster. So you got to watch that. Even though you're traveling, you might be out of town, it's usually the same set of guys who are always traveling and hitting these big money jobs. So if you're a good welder, word will get around. If you're a screw up, word will get around, right? So your phone will be busy if you are a good welder. You can pass X-ray. That's gonna help. Now, another thing, as far as your higher paying welding jobs, I know this is a little tricky subject, but you're gonna have to learn how to pass that urine analysis test. Okay, that is just part of it. You better listen. I'm not going to, you figure it out. All right. You figure out what you need to do to pass that test. Okay. Your nuclear plants and most of your refineries are going to do a UA analysis as far as checking for what you have in your system. Okay. Very few places do hair follicle. I have done hair follicle too. They will draw it under the armpits. If you're bald, they'll take it anywhere from the chest up, okay? And if you're one of those guys, you have something in your system and you tell yourself, "Well, I'm just going to shave all the hair off my body and your eyebrows or whatever," it's a refusal, okay? You're not going to cheat the system. You won't get the job if you don't have any hair to choose or to get from or whatever, all that stuff, right? So, how to find high paying welding jobs. That's what we are talking about if you're just tuning in. Another one, your certifications. Okay. We're going to dig a little bit into your welding certs. Like I said before, with your welding certifications, yes, you're going to have to know how to weld 60-10 and 70-18 in the 6G position. And you're going to have to learn how to weld TIG and stick as a combo in the 6G position with certs. Now, another big thing with certs that will get your foot in the door are going to be these few items that I have here. A TWIC, TWIC, your TWIC card, okay? That is a it's a little looks like an ID badge. You might see like it kind of looks like at the airport, but initially it's provided from Homeland Security, okay? Now, you need your TWIC card on most of the power plants that are on the water or the refinery. You know, a lot of dock workers have the TWIC card, but again, a lot of refineries and power plants that touch the water, whether it's a lake or ocean or something like that, require you to have a TWIC card. Now, if you've got a group, if there's a group of 100 guys, and let's say they call the union hall and they say, "Hey, we need 100 welders. They got to have your TWIC card, your RSO, and this and that." The list is going to get shorter and shorter on what these guys have, and you want to make sure that you're prepared. So on these certifications, this is what I would advise you to have to make you to kind of give you that distinction, right? So the first one's going to be your TWIC card. The second one is going to be your RSO. Okay, that's your refinery safety orientation. Most of these certifications are on most of your plants that are on the water. Now, your RSO, you can get in California. Now, I believe there's only two places, which will be California and Houston, Texas, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, down in Texas, it's called the Safety Council. Now, your Safety Council and your RSO, I believe, are the only places where you can get these certifications that are good for any refineries and all refineries in the country. So if you have these two certifications, they will bypass most of your other oil refineries. You know, like there's refineries in Washington State, New Jersey. I believe there's a ConocoPhillips somewhere in Chicago or something like that. But if you have your RSO or your safety council, you are already ahead on the list as far as getting that high paying job. Okay. So another one, it doesn't come up a whole lot, but if you have your passport, okay. If you have your passport, you are already automatically, and especially after COVID, you're automatically about 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the next guy who doesn't have a passport. Okay. In this field, these contractors do not, they just listen. The contractors and the union halls do not like to waste time, okay? They will literally go down a list. They will call, "Hey, Mike, this is Joe. Do you got a passport?" All right, boom. They will hang up the phone and call the next guy on the list that quick, okay? They have the union, especially the union hall, because they have to man the work and they don't want to lose the contractor because they want to be able to provide the guys and the gals on that job site, okay? So, just by having a passport, you can save about six, like I said, after COVID, you could save about 6 to 8 weeks. Now, here's something key also where the passport does go in hand: Alberta, Canada. The unions here have a lot of contracts with Alberta, which if you have your passport, you have a good chance of getting up there. And I'm going to have a whole live talking about everything in Alberta and what it's like to work up there, because that's a whole different animal that is needs its whole episode, right? So that's a whole hidden gem in itself. I'm not going to go too deep in Alberta right now, but if you have your passport, your TWIC card, and your RSO, you're on a good move to these high paying welding jobs. Now, here is another one that is extremely tough to get. Okay. This one is called a red badge. Okay. A red badge. Now, is it a red physical badge? No. Your red badge is to the nuclear industry. Okay. Now, it is extremely difficult to get in the nuclear field. You almost have to not necessarily be invited, but you have to find out where they're hiring, because usually in the nuclear circuit, they use the same people over and over because the process is just so expensive to get a red badge, and it's book and computer intensive. A lot of people get frustrated with the safety questions. The nuclear industry has a psyche eval, and I've got a whole episode dedicated to that. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but if you can get into the nuclear field and get your red badge, out of 100 guys, you are out of 100 guys, you are probably 20 to 30. Okay, I would say out of a bunch of 100 welders, maybe 30 to 25 welders have a red badge. Okay, those are some really good odds that can work in your favor. And one thing that's cool about the nuclear industry is that it is pretty faithful. All of your nuclear plants go on 18-month cycles, and they always faithfully go down in the spring and in the fall every single year, every 18 months. Most plants have 2 units, so you get to bounce back and forth. Okay. The outages are anywhere from 21 days to maybe 60 to 90. That's some really good work. But staying on topic, these are your high paying welding jobs and the certs that you need. So, getting your RSO, your TWIC card, your passport, your nuclear red badge, and one that is it is important. They don't necessarily fight each other, hand in hand if you don't have this, but if you have what's called a OSHA 30, that helps a lot too, because some of these places are requiring that you have your OSHA 30. And just by you having your OSHA 30, you're already a week ahead of the next guy if he doesn't have it. Your OSHA 30 takes 4 days. Okay, if you have that and the next guy doesn't, the union hall is more than likely going to dispatch you instead of this guy, just because you're already a week ahead of him. Okay. So that is very key. Your OSHA 30 will help. You can take it online. I don't know what the OSHA 30 costs. It might be about 150 to $200, but if you are in a union, you can go down to your union hall, and about 85 to 90% of the time they will pay for it, and they'll sign you up where you can do your OSHA 30 at home. It typically takes about 7.5. They let you work on it 7.5 hours a day. You can't work any more than that. They've changed a lot of the rules now and stuff. So your RSO, your TWIC card, your passport, your OSHA 30, and your nuclear red badge will help. Okay. Now, also the traveling. The more you travel, it's just a common sense thing, right? The more you travel, the more different type of people you're gonna meet. So the more you get out, you're gonna build your network, and your network is your net worth. Okay, if you're able to be know a whole bunch of guys that are that work out of New York, or work out of California, these are your higher paying places. You're more than likely to be able to get up there and work with them, just because you've made friends with these guys and all that stuff, right? So again, these are really key factors on how you find those good high paying welding jobs. You create good relationships, you get your certifications, you keep your hood down and practice as much as you can on your stick and your TIG welding. Okay. Now, nothing wrong with the other processes, as far as, maybe if you're a MIG welder and do flux core and stuff, there's nothing wrong with that. There's just that MIG and flux core welders are a dime a dozen these days. It's an easier process to do, but focus on your TIG welding and your stick welding, and keeping your welds clean for x-ray and passing them, and you will be on your way to these high paying six-figure welding jobs. All right, so I appreciate you guys for listening to this live stream. Stay tuned. We got way more content coming up. All right. So you guys take care out there and work safe.